Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Richard. I'm half of the Two Bald Nerds, and this guy over here, as we talked about earlier, is Mike Meyers. Say hi, Mike.
I'm the other half of Two Bald Nerds.
You were supposed to say hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike. I mean, which half am I? Am I the better half? You know,
oh, you're always the better half.
That's how you introduce your wife, I assume, right?
Every time I'm with my wife, I always introduce her as the better half, 100%.
Oh, it's safer.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been together for a long time, so I learned that lesson a long time ago. But anyways, we're not here to talk about bald nerd relationships, right? Although that could be an interesting session. We might have to think.
I just had a little joke in my head. Not quite suitable for prime time.
I love it. Well, listen, everybody's with us today because they heard that we were going to be talking about what do you do when your computer decides it doesn't want to be a computer anymore? It decides it wants to be a boat anchor or a paperweight or a Frisbee for that matter. So, Mike, I'm going to lean on you a little bit here for your expertise. You've been around computers a long time.
Long time.
You know what it takes to kind of prepare, because this is something you have to prepare for, right? Like you can't do anything after the fact, right?
I can do magic after the fact, but it's going to cost you a lot more money. So what I really want to concentrate on here, Richard, is a few basic things that people can do on Windows systems to allow them to make them a lot more recoverable when things go bad, when a hard drive dies, if a power surge goes through, if the operating system decides to get a terrible piece of malware. I mean, we've all dealt with these types of go boom problems, right? So what I want to talk about here is just talk about 4 things that people need to be doing on Windows systems. And I'm hoping we're all at least on Windows 10. I'm going to do this in Windows 10, or at least talk about Windows 10, but this also obviously works for 11 as well.
Wait a minute, Mike. I hang on a sec. I thought all you had to do is just take your Windows CD and put it back in the CD-ROM drive and just load Windows back up if it decides to not work anymore.
What is this CD thing of which you speak? Windows, Microsoft does a really good job of making Windows highly recoverable from all kinds of problems. The challenges I run into is, I can always, lift up your monitor, pull the computer out and slide a new computer underneath it and fix everything there, right? But what I'd rather do is restore your programs, your applications, your desktop, everything the way you like it. And in order for me to do that, as a user, you have to do a few things. And I'm going to go over 4 things that we're going to do. And again, this is for Windows systems. And surprisingly enough, Macs do a lot of this as well. They'll have different terminologies for it, but they do almost exactly the same thing. Linux doesn't do anything like this because people who run Linux systems, when a Linux system goes down, why, that's an adventure. So, so they enjoy it. But anyway, let's just go through a couple of things really quick, Richard. Number 1, and this one's critical, and people never do this, is I need your, we call it the product key. In the old days, we used to call it the CD key. In Windows 11, they call it digital license. It's that little code that you put in so that you can activate Windows, so that you can make Office 365 run or whatever it might be. And
Mike, I remember writing that product key on blank CDs with a Sharpie. I'm sure
I did too. I did too. Luckily, you don't have to do that anymore. Probably the best thing you can do these days is there's like 80 different ways to get these keys. And usually the best way to do it is just to look up, because Microsoft is actually changing how to access these keys these days. But there are third-party utilities that will also do it for you. But the important thing is get that key. Richard, this is one of the things that I always like to do when I install Windows. I like to get a physical installation media from Microsoft. First of all, the box is pretty. And then secondly, you get a little thumb drive in there and it comes with the product key right on there. Now, what I'll usually do is I'll take my phone and I'll take a photograph of it. So I always have that with me. but at the very least, documenting it one way or another is always going to be a good idea. So get that key. I don't care how you do it, but get it. Because if you don't have it and I have to reinstall Windows, you just spend another $120 because if I don't have that, I can't get around that. The next thing you got to think about are something called restore points. Now, restore points have been around for 10 years. And with more and more newer versions of Windows, it becomes more and more automated. However, I don't like to count on when Microsoft chooses to make restore points. I like to do it myself. Restore points are going to happen anytime I'm installing any kind of significant application. I'm going to manually generate a restore point, and I'll call it before I installed application X. And that'll be the one time I'll do it. If I'm doing a Windows update, even though Windows has a rollback capability, I don't trust it. So I'll also put in a restore point just before I go through an update. I don't like to do automatic updates. So when update Tuesdays come along, that doesn't mean much to me. I'll usually wait a day and see. I have many very bad stories about automatic updates that I'm not a fan of. So restore points are absolutely critical. When you go into a Windows recovery environment, you get lots of different things you can choose to restore from, but you can actually select your restore points right there. Now, a lot of people go, well, Mike, these restore points are so important. If I have a bad hard drive, then I can't get to my restore points. So should I put my restore points on external media? And my answer is no. And it's a real simple reason there, Richard, is that if your system is so corrupted up that you can't boot Windows, you're going to be reinstalling Windows anyway. The restore points are moot, so don't even worry about it. So that's the big thing. Use manual restore points and do it like a clock. Don't even think about it. You do them. I've been doing them for years. They have saved my bacon a million times. The third thing you got to do is you got to make a recovery drive. See, Richard, you were joking around there a little bit because you're like, oh, I'll just use my installation CD. Or you could use your installation media. And that you can do that. And that is probably the first thing we do if you've got a bad Windows system is you go into your bootable installation media and you go into the recovery environment, better known as repair my computer. So that's great, but a recovery drive looks at your system as it is. In particular, special DLLs or anything like that may not be on the installation disk. You can put those on yours, and you don't have to do anything special. You just create a recovery disk. It's trivial to do. You just go into Windows, type in create recovery disk, hit enter, and it'll show you how to make one.
I was going to say, and you could probably find instructions on that on YouTube as well too. I mean, I'm sure tons of people. Yeah, absolutely. For those that don't know how to do that.
The one thing I'd recommend, people are like, well, how big? So you're going to put it on a thumb drive, okay? And people are like, how big of a thumb drive do I need? You can probably get away with something as small as 4 gigabytes. But today, 1 terabyte thumb drives, USB 3.1 thumb drives are going for like $30. So for me, 1 terabyte is the number. So almost all of my thumb drives are a terabyte. And make sure that they're USB 3.1 with the little blue on there so that it just goes faster. Otherwise, I've made the mistake of putting it on like a USB 2. It's just real blue. So I don't, I try to avoid that. Again, you can use your installation media as a recovery drive, but to me, installation media is precious. And it goes in, it goes into a locked cabinet in my house. And so I don't want to mess with those unless I absolutely have to. However, what I will do when I make that recovery drive, like you were saying earlier, Richard, I'll put the product key on the drive itself. Yeah. And then that way I've got it handy. In fact, on most of my systems, I don't have it here in the studio, but on most of my systems, I literally will tape it to the top of a monitor. And then I've always got it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Have you seen that today it seems a little less of a requirement to have to restore and reload machines? Like I remember back in the day, it was an all the time thing. It doesn't seem to be as big of an issue these days as it used to.
I'm still doing it quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
I think what you might be seeing is that, and this is a speculation, Richard, is that we do not task desktop systems nearly as much as we used to, mainly because we all have smartphones on us and stuff like that, that the only people who have desktops anymore are people who have like really heavy lifting workstation, Adobe Creative Cloud, they're running Blender, they're doing video editing, they have very specific jobs. Whereas you used to go into an office and everybody had a desktop, and half of them were just, getting on the company webpage 9 times out of 10. And so much of that has transferred off of desktops, certainly gone to laptops. Over a total, we have a lot of laptops with docking stations. Yeah. So when people walk away, they take their laptop with them. But no, we still see a lot of it out there, quite a bit. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about is backups, because I don't think we've ever been in a more confusing time than we are today in backups. So first of all, let's make sure we understand what backup means. Backup just means you make another copy of something. That's it. And then that way, if something goes kabooey, then you've got a backup copy of your Excel spreadsheet or your, the videos we did for Two Bald Nerds or whatever it might be, and you just put it back. That's all backup means. In a big enterprise environment, you'll still hear terms. In fact, this is why I wore my Fox Sports shirt today. Fox Sports, you've seen the vans at the football games and all that. Mm-hmm. So they're the guys, like the announcers for like most college games. They're not on the field. They're in a studio somewhere in the north part of Houston, Texas. But by law, they have to back up every video they've done. Like from 1975, they still have them. And it has one of the most amazing backup systems I have ever seen in my life. It's like the length of a, pardon the pun, football field, but it's filled with super high-end tape drives and big robotic carousels. It's like something out of, space stuff. It's absolutely amazing. And hey, Carl and the guys over at Fox Sports, I love going over there. They let me take pictures of stuff. It's a lot of fun. So in those types of heavy duty situations, traditionally what we've done, this goes back even 30 years, we would use backup software, which would not only make a copy, but it would make a copy in a certain way that was, number one, compressed, when compression was a lot more important than it is today. And then secondarily, it would have it encoded in such a way that you would only be able to use their tool to recover the product. Then they would have all these different backup methodologies, incremental, differential, stuff like that. On individual systems, nobody cares about that anymore. You really don't. Today, this is my backup. All right. So this is a USB 3.1, 4 terabyte external drive. It was really just a cover. I put my own drive in there. Under $200, and does an amazing job. This is 4 terabytes, Richard. So this is going to handle pretty much anybody's individual system needs, a laptop or a desktop. This one actually backs up 3 different systems, and I've had it for about 3 years now, and it's absolutely fantastic.
And again, with that backup drive, that external drive, you're not backing up Windows, you're not backing up your applications, you're literally backing up your individual files.
Let's talk about that secondly, because that's the other thing to talk about here is not only do you have a medium for it, and keep in mind, I'm trying to use the backup tools that are native to Windows, which are, in fact, it's called Backup and Restore Windows 7. But it actually works pretty good. But in no way are you limited that. For most people, if you have good restore points and you have a fairly recent recovery drive, when you go into the Windows recovery environment, it's going to restore your applications 99% of the time. Right. For me, if I have a system that goes down so hard that I've lost applications, that's reinstallation time anyway for me. Yeah. And I'm not going to restore to a system that I don't trust. So in that case, I'll just do a complete reinstallation. Yeah, it's not that hard anymore. I mean, the only thing that I have a challenge on is stuff like my gaming, to be honest with you, because my gaming, I have over 300 games on Steam, and I'm filling up my hard drive with a lot of games. But you know, those I can restore down. I use a lot of Adobe Creative Cloud. For me to reinstall Adobe Creative Cloud, all I need to do is reinstall the Adobe Creative Cloud app, which connects me to my account up in the sky, and it brings everything back down perfectly anyway. Same thing with Office 365. Do you actually have Office 365? Do you have Microsoft Office installed on your computer right now?
I actually do.
Okay. Well, yep. I do too. But it's pretty much the same scenario there as well. I can just go ahead and in that case, I'll download a new copy of Office 365, do the reinstallation, and once I put my name in there, everything's fine. The problem is your data. It's the data, okay? And this is where people mess up. You don't have to go buy a big external drive. A little thumb drive will usually be more than enough for your Word documents and all that type of stuff, as long as you keep it in one relatively good place. In Windows, we call it the user profile, which is going to be C:\users/ Mike M or Richard C. So that's going to be your desktop, your downloads, your however. Yeah. So people always tease me because my desktop's messy. Well, there's a bit of a method in the madness here, because I have a one-stop spot where I can literally shove in the drive and just drag and say copy to the drive, and I get everything in one big shot. So
what about replacing that thumb drive with cloud storage? I know that's a little touchy subject sometimes.
No, it's not a touchy subject. It's just, cloud is great. I'm not anti-cloud at all. The challenge I have with cloud, number one, is privacy. As Richard, as you know, I'm downright paranoid about stuff. And I'm not going to recommend one cloud provider over another, because there's so many out there. And if you want to get two computer nerds in a fight, folks, strip them down to their underwear, throw them in a padded room, and just before you shut the door, go, the best cloud backup solution is, and then shut the door real quick, because no one's ever going to agree. My big issue with cloud backup is, number one, the reputation of the people who are doing it. I've seen many cloud backup providers simply disappear. The other issue I have is speed. A lot of cloud backups, especially on that initial backup, you can really go on and on about this in terms of the amount of time it takes to get this backed up. Good cloud providers will be able to say, do backups from, midnight till 6 in the morning or things like that. But even that'll slow things down. We tried backing up a server on a relatively high-speed internet connection at Total Seminars, and it took 30 days.
Wow.
To get the initial backup. Now, these are some limitations that, this is about 5-year-old information. We've tripled our internet speed, so I guess it'd only be 10 days now. But I'm not anti-cloud, but just understand, anything that's put on the cloud can be potentially exposed through nefarious actions. It can be very slow, and it can cost money too. This guy was $200 one time. I'm sorry.
I was going to ask that, because I always think of things obviously from a security perspective. So for instance, putting it on somebody else's on a cloud, you're basically just putting it on somebody else's computer. So you have to make sure that you trust that computer, right? Whereas that drive that's sitting there on your desk, as long as you have a method to safely secure that, who's going to get their hands on that, right?
Well, the counter argument to what you just said is, well, Houston has hurricanes. So what if Hurricane Richard comes through and flattens the house, and this goes along with the systems? So, that can be an argument going the other way. I do cloud style backups, but I just don't do a generic backup on everything. Like, for example, I have a lot of photographs and videos that I'm proud of, vacation pictures, all that stuff that you keep on your phone and never do anything with. So I use a provider called SmugMug. So for me, pictures don't live on my phone. They don't live on my desktop. but it's pictures and videos. So, Mike and Richard on vacation in the Bahamas, I'll make and then you and I can look at them together too. So there's some conveniences there.
There would be a lot of sunscreen involved in that.
Yeah, a lot. I put so much on me, I could walk on the moon. But so that becomes an important thing. So like for really critical, like I do a lot of presentations, right? So I have probably 5,000 PowerPoints, maybe more than that.
Wow.
So those are precious. And I will put those in a cloud, but I'll usually use a Dropbox or, a standard cloud system like that. Almost all these backup tools can back up to a cloud without you having to buy a third-party tool, So it really boils down to this. I'm not going to tell you how to back up your personal data. I'm going to say this. Every now and then, well, I don't need to, because I want you to look and poke around on your desktop, on your laptop and go, is there anything on this computer that if I lost, I would cry? That's literally what I say to myself. Yep. And use that as a tool set to help you define where your backups are going to go and how your backups are going to manifest. So there's a lot of great options out there. And so you can tell I'm a little bit anti-cloud provider, but I'm not anti-cloud. I use SmugMug for my photos and videos. I use tools like Dropbox and OneDrive for things that I want to access anywhere. And I'm happy with that. The other nice part about doing those types of backups is I'm not dependent on a backup software. I can just open it up and drag it back down like any kind of copy without having to deal with, restore the recovery tool. Forget that stuff. That's 1997 stuff, and we're way past that.
Right.
So those are the 4 things.
Well, amazing knowledge and experience. Thank you, Mike. As always a wealth of experience and knowledge that everybody gets to learn from. So thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you guys on the next Two Bald Nerds special. Hopefully we'll have to figure out what we're going to do next, Mike. What are we going to do? Any ideas? We're definitely not going to talk about vacations and sunscreen next time though.
You never know. All right. But I don't know, Richard, you're going to have to tell me. We'll do that offline. Guys, we'll catch you on the next Two Bald Nerds. Until then, This is Mike Meyers and Richard Chapman saying bye-bye.
See you next time.